One game, one fumble, one moment. That's all it took to unravel everything
by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
Cam Newton had spent his entire career building. Super Bowl 50 wasn't just a loss. It was a night the NFL's most electric, most polarizing, most physically dominant quarterback walked up to the biggest stage in sports and watched it all collapse right in front of him.
He jumped away instead of jumping into the pile.
And what happened after that fumble, that one single moment, told you everything you needed to know about how the world was already waiting for him to fail. Cam Newton wasn't supposed to be here. Before he ever took a snap in the NFL, the narrative surrounding him was already complicated. The Heisman Trophy winner out of Auburn, the kid who led the Tigers to a national championship with one of the most dominant single seasons a college quarterback had ever produced. And yet, heading into the 2011 NFL Draft, scouts couldn't agree on what they had in front of them. Some teams saw a generational talent, a freak of nature with a live arm, elite athleticism, and the kind of physical tools you simply cannot coach. Other teams saw a system quarterback, a guy who would get exposed the second he steps into a pro system. The questions were loud, the doubts were real, and Cam Newton heard every single one of them. The Carolina Panthers took him first overall and handed him the keys immediately.
The Carolina Panthers select Cam Newton, quarterback, Auburn.
And the league welcomed him with open arms, by which I mean they tried to destroy him. In his very first regular season game, he threw 4 interceptions. The narrative machine cranked up fast. And then Cam put them all in a blender. He threw for 422 yards in that same game, the most passing yards by a quarterback in their NFL debut ever. The dude was going to be a problem. The Superman persona was born. The dabbing, the celebrations, the sheer infectious joy that Cam played with was magnetic. Kids loved him, his teammates loved him. But for every fan who fell in love with Cam Newton, there was a critic waiting in the shadows. He was too flashy, too loud, too everything. The football world has always had an uneasy relationship with quarterbacks who stand out the way Cam did. And the criticism carried undertones that went far deeper than football. Cam felt it, and rather than shrinking from it, he leaned in.
I'm an African-American quarterback that may scare a lot of people because they haven't seen nothing that they can compare me to.
The 2015 NFL season was the greatest season of Cam Newton's career, and I don't say that lightly. The dude was on another planet. Cam Newton in 2015, 3,837 passing yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He added 636 rushing yards and 10 more touchdowns on the ground. That's 45 total touchdowns on a 15-1 football team that lost exactly one game all season long. The Panthers went through the regular season like a buzzsaw. Their defense was terrifying, and Cam Newton was its beating heart. The MVP award wasn't even a debate. Cam won it unanimously. The first unanimous MVP selection in NFL history. Let that sink in. Every single voter looked at what was happening in Carolina and said, yeah, there's no argument here. This man is the best player in football.
Cam Newton, the legend grows. Everybody's getting to see you do your...
The playoffs came, and Carolina picked up right where they left off. They demolished Seattle. Then they hosted the NFC Championship against Arizona and completely destroyed them 49-15. Cam was dabbing on the field, soaking in every single second of it. The man was alive. He was thriving. He was on top of the football world. Carolina was headed to Super Bowl 50, and everything felt inevitable. That's the thing about inevitability, though. The moment you start believing in it, the universe has a way of reminding you that nothing is ever guaranteed.
It's cover zero, man-to-man, no safety in the middle of the field. Who's going to win?
The Denver Broncos came into Super Bowl 50 and almost nobody was picking them. And I want to be clear about that because context matters. This was a Broncos defense that had spent the entire season making opposing quarterbacks look like they were playing their first NFL game. Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Chris Harris Jr. This was a unit that held opposing offenses to under 20 points in 12 regular season games. They led the NFL in sacks, they led the league in takeaways, and they were precisely built to do one thing in Super Bowl 50. Stop Cam Newton. The Broncos spent weeks drawing up a game plan as detailed and targeted as anything you'll see in football. They had answers for everything, counters for his counters. And the Panthers, if we're being real, may have started believing their own hype just a little too much. 17 wins, unanimous MVP, NFC Championship blowout. When everything has gone right for that long, it's hard to remember that the margin in the NFL is razor thin. The stage was set. And on February 7, 2016, at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, it was time to find out what Cam Newton was really made of.
Because you're worried about the speed around me. He's out.
The game started, and it was immediately clear that something was wrong. Denver's defense came out with a level of aggression that the Panthers were simply not prepared for. Von Miller was a nightmare off the edge. The pocket was collapsing on nearly every drop back. Cam's timing was off. His rhythm was gone. And the Panthers' offense, the one that had been unstoppable for 6 months, looked completely out of sync. Denver got on the board first. Carolina answered. It stayed tight and uncomfortable. This was not the blowout that Cam's biggest supporters had envisioned. And then came the play that changed everything. Third quarter, Cam drops back from his own end zone. Von Miller comes screaming off the edge. The ball is out. It bounces. It sits there. And Malik Jackson falls on it for a touchdown. Denver leads 13-7, and the energy in that building tilted completely. The Panthers had chances. They moved the ball, but the Broncos defense kept making stops at the most critical moments. Every time Carolina needed a first down, Denver found a way to get off the field. It was like watching a team get chess matched in real time. The Broncos had solved the puzzle.
Coach Cowher talked about it at halftime. Look at Emmanuel Sanders.
And then, with less than 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the moment happened. The one that nobody would ever let Cam forget. The Panthers were down 24-10. Cam took a snap, dropped back, and fumbled. The ball skipped across the turf, and Cam Newton, the biggest, strongest, most physically imposing quarterback in the league, stood over it, looked at it, and didn't go for it. A Broncos defender recovered. Game over. Super Bowl over. Denver won 24-10. Von Miller was named Super Bowl MVP, and Cam Newton, who finished with 265 yards and 0 touchdowns, walked off the field with a loss he could feel in his chest for years. What happened next made everything worse. Cam Newton walked into the post-game press conference and lasted approximately 3.5 minutes before getting up and walking out. He was sitting there in a hoodie, answered questions in monosyllables, visibly devastated. And when a Broncos player nearby started loudly celebrating, Cam stood up and left. Just walked right out of the room. And the football world lost its mind. Every pundit, every analyst, every talking head on every network had a take. He was immature. He was a sore loser. He wasn't a leader. This was proof that the Superman persona was just a costume. And when things got hard, Cam didn't have what it took. Here's what I'll say about that. When Cam celebrated touchdowns all season, all these dabs, all that joy, the same voices criticizing him now were criticizing him for celebrating him too much, for showboating, for not being what a quarterback is supposed to look like. And now, when he sat in the aftermath of the worst night of his professional life and couldn't hide his devastation, those same voices hammered him for that too. There was no version of Cam Newton that the critics were prepared to accept. The Super Bowl just gave them more ammunition. And here's what gets completely lost in the fumble and the press conference and all the noise. The Denver Broncos defense was historically great. Cam was hit 18 times in that football game. 18! He was pressured on nearly every single drop back. The Panthers' offensive line was overwhelmed from the first series to the last. And yet, somehow, the narrative became entirely about Cam Newton failing rather than about the Broncos winning. That imbalance in how the story got told, that's what stung the most.
Von Miller did it again.
Here's what I keep coming back to when I think about Cam Newton and Super Bowl 50. When Cam walked off that field in Santa Clara, he wasn't just losing a game. He was losing control of his own story. Because the football world had never fully embraced him the way it embraces other superstars. And the Super Bowl loss gave the doubters the anchor they needed to permanently reshape the narrative around him. The fumble became a character judgment. The press conference walkout became evidence of his limitations as a leader. Think about this. If Cam Newton wins Super Bowl 50, we're having a completely different conversation about his legacy. He's in the discussion for the greatest dual-threat quarterbacks of all time. The Superman character becomes legendary instead of a punchline. One play, one game, one night, and the entire trajectory of how history remembers him shifts. Instead, Super Bowl 50 became the defining moment of his legacy in the worst possible way. Not his unanimous MVP season, not the 45 touchdowns, not the 17-1 record. The defining moment became a fumble on the ground and a 3-minute press conference. That's not fair, but sports rarely are. Cam Newton gave everything he had to football. He took punishment that shortened his career significantly. He brought an energy and a personality to the quarterback position that changed what it looked like to play that position, opening doors for players who came after him. He was one of the most uniquely gifted players the NFL has ever produced. And for one full, glorious, historic season, he was the best football player on the planet. Super Bowl 50 was the night the world decided to forget all of that and just remember what he didn't do. One fumble, one press conference, one night in Santa Clara. The night Cam Newton lost everything. Drop a comment. Which Super Bowl collapse hit the hardest? We might cover it next.